All right, it's my pleasure right now to be joined by the great Jordy Culotta of the Jordy Culotta Show.
JD, my man.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me back.
And I just want to compliment Jordy real quick on the work he's doing with his show. It's not easy to do something on your own, right?
Yeah, right.
Independent. I like the creativity. I like the set. It was funny. Some guy in your comment section said, "Hey, do you need new furniture? Your seat's a little old looking." I'm like, "That's the idea."
Yeah, right.
You know,
right.
It's not supposed to look pristine and new. Hey, we're hanging out. You
Right.
know, is it Lloyd Courtney?
It is.
I think he is a coming up guy. Very snappy, very quick.
Yeah, he is. Witty.
Witty?
Yeah.
He's kind of cultivating himself into a personality. You've got multiple camera angles that you can punch to.
Yeah.
And you involve a lot of people without it getting where people are talking over each other and it gets too busy. I think everyone kind of knows their role and plays their role well.
It's been fun to kind of figure it out. We're still in the process of kind of finding our way. I think every day, you know, you kind of find a new lane in some area that you can kind of go into. But it's been nerve-wracking. It's been exciting. It's been fun, it's been anxious, all of these emotions wrapped up into one, you know, kind of going out on your own and flying the plane by yourself is a totally different responsibility, and we've had a hell of a first 10 months of doing it.
And you can talk, like, I don't want to say like you're in a bar,
right.
But you can have a real conversation and kind of, you know, use the language you want to use and whatnot, and you get sponsors too, but I think there's an ownership you take, and this is the way it's going to be, this is how we're going to talk, and this is the product we're going to deliver.
Yeah, it's a different space. It's much different than what we come from in traditional media, what you're in now, and you know, where we are, you know, FCC regulated, and there's guidelines, and there's breaks that you have to hit, and there's spots that you have to clear, and all of that goes into the corporate world of where we are in media. And in our format, you know, which is a kind of a wide open space, you're able to pay the bills by making sure that the sponsor gets their promotion, all the while, you know, showing your personality and also kind of giving your true opinion. I mean, sometimes that can be dangerous. Sometimes that can, you know, show that you're willing to give your opinion. But you have to be measured by it still. You know, I mean, not as much as where we were in traditional media, but you still have to watch yourself and understand that it's a fine line we have to walk.
Yeah, you don't want to be dealing with that cough button, right? That 7-second delay.
That's right.
Knock that out. Somebody told me to ask you the last time you were here, and your business is your business, but they told me to ask you, why did Jordy leave 104.5?
Yeah, and it was a difference of opinion on both sides of the table. You know, I think that they had a outlook, and I will always be grateful and respective and appreciate the opportunity that Guarantee Broadcasting gave me. Really, I mean, it was a hell of a run over 10 years. And we built something special, and we had something on the radio show, on the morning show, that was being nationally recognized, and we were very proud of that. And at the end of the day, it really just comes down to business. It came down to business, came down to a couple of dollars and cents that we just disagreed upon. We shook hands and went our separate ways. And since then, it's been all good. It really has been. It's been great on both sides, and they're continuing to succeed, and we're finding our way and hopefully getting a spot at the table.
Yeah, it seems like everyone is doing fine. Anybody who watches or listens to Jordy's show, you see that the quality of the guest has not dropped off. If anything, it continues to go up, and Jacob Hester and T-Bob are doing their thing.
And we're all still friends. The question that I get more than anything is, do you still talk to Moscona? Do you still talk to T-Bob? Do you still talk to Hester? And we're still in group text. We still talk all the time. We see each other all the time. We are routinely catching up. We're routinely talking. We don't see each other as much as we used to, obviously, but we still have very good friendships. You know, I mean, it wasn't a working relationship, but we are friends at the end of the day, and you know, because of something that happened professionally, we are all still friends. I mean, it's nothing from that fell out.
Right. It's the joke we always make. It's not the scene from Anchorman where they're underneath the bridge and about to pass time pizza, you know, duking it out.
Right. Here comes the Guarantee people. Heads up. You know.
Right. Or the station. You guys haven't been in the ratings since 1975 or whatever. So it's funny how life works out. So let's try to have as much fun as we can with this. So at one point in your life, you're working across the street and you're doing a morning show with
Derek Panansky.
Derek Panansky.
Yeah.
Ed Orgeron is out of football.
Right.
at the time. He comes on your show as a very popular guest weekly. I think obviously Ed Orgeron has been a nationally known personality for a while.
Yeah.
Les Miles hires him. I think Les was cautious of hiring him for a while, kind of like, I like good coaches, but I don't want
I don't want to hire my replacement.
Right, exactly. Hire my replacement. I want guys who are a little more quiet. Dave Aranda, maybe.
Yeah, right.
My friend Cam Cameron, he won't cause me any trouble. This Ed Orgeron, he's a bit bombastic.
Right.
Maybe draws some attention to himself. I did think that the year he coached with Les, he did not draw any attention to himself. I think he took his marching orders, did a good job. So he eventually becomes the interim head coach. Les is fired 4 games in 2016. I'll never forget when Ed Orgeron took to the microphone, the press conference where he was introduced as the interim. He said, "My right-hand man, Derek Panamsky."
Yeah.
And that struck me. He's right. Derek that we know in the media that was doing the morning show is his right-hand man. So that came about. So if you can, without getting too serious about it, what kind of led to you guys maybe not chatting anymore?
So going back to where you were about the right-hand man stuff, when Derek and Ed would get off the radio on Tuesday mornings, he was regularly coming on with us Tuesday mornings at 7:30, and he was staying for about 30 minutes. And he didn't have anything to do, and he was living on the North Shore, and he would just get up and he would drive in every Tuesday morning, and he would sit with us. And a lot of the times he'd stay till 9 o'clock. He may not stay on the air with us, but he'd stay in the studio and he'd hang out. We'd be talking back and forth and talking about. And when we would get off at 9 o'clock, I would go to the sales team, right? I would go to Guarantee Sales and hit the streets and do the sales and make sure it was hitting budgets and stuff like that. Those two would get in a car and drive all over South Louisiana and talk and meet with high school coaches. And Ed that was his comfortable nature. He just wanted to be in a high school coach's office. He wanted to be building relationships.
South Louisiana visit with people.
He knew he was getting back in it.
Yeah.
He didn't know he was getting back in it at LSU. But he knew he was going to get back into coaching, so he wanted to establish that and be able to, you can go out and talk to him and watch practice, and you're not regulated. So they were doing that, and Derek had really good relationships within that community. So, that's really what kind of formed that along the way. And obviously I was kind of along for the ride as far as just kind of witnessing it every Tuesday and being a part of it, and being privy to the conversations and seeing the stuff that they were talking about. And then, he's named defensive line coach, and he continues to give us access and keep us around. And then he's named interim head coach, and he begins to come on the radio with us as the head coach. And that really does a lot for our radio show as far as the credibility goes, for him being a weekly guest. And not to say that we were pushing any message or that we were standing out in front of anything that was happening. We just were in favor of Ed Orgeron, right? We were very much pro-O at the time. And since then, the things that have changed along the way in the program were not being talked about when I was across the street, because it was a little understood that you can't really go there, you know what I mean? Unless you're going to go full like Moscona does and just goes all in, right? And that was kind of understood in the nature. And once my relationship ended at Guarantee Media, my relationship with them totally changed for some unsaid reason. I don't know what happened along the way. I don't know if anything ever happened personally, nothing that I can go back and say there's the mile marker when it happened, right? But obviously something was going on behind the scenes where they shifted their total view of me. And at that point, it didn't become personal, and I know a lot of people out there think it is. It's not personal. What it really did is it opened up where now I can be honest.
Yeah.
Now I can really be honest about the evaluation and the analysis and how much it doesn't make sense as a...
And the truth is, when things don't go well, people are going to look for places and look for people to talk about.
Absolutely.
When things are not going well. And it's not an insult to others, but they know, who's going to maybe step up and take some bullets.
And to be frank, they knew that I liked and took up for Ed Orgeron when it wasn't cool to take up for Ed Orgeron. I mean, there were many times that I would walk into lunch meetings or walk into scenarios where people would be like, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean? And they understood that. They knew that, you know, I was kind of one that they could count on. And whenever my relationship ended with my former employer, that changed for them. And it had to change for me because I was going out on my own and they provided no benefit. I mean, I couldn't continue to wave the flag if there was nothing to really say. And then from that point, it got so bad on the field and really off the field for the stuff that Panamsky we thought was in charge of. I mean, from what my understanding was, the way he was hired was really to kind of handle Ed Orgeron's public relations. Michael Bonnet is the sports information director for LSU sports and LSU football, but Panamsky was kind of tied directly to the head coach. And his public relations just became misstep after misstep, disaster after disaster. And at some point you had to tell the truth. You had to say that, like, something's disconnected behind the scenes where they're not being able to get a message to their top employer of how to handle yourself.
Hey, real quick, I know Derek too, and we all know Derek, and this isn't an attack on Derek, and I'm not here to do that. Look, we've got to admit, an unbelievable story.
Unreal. The book is going to be unbelievable.
That a guy that was hosting a radio show across the street rises to prominence in a college football power, and a coach who was mocked and kind of made fun of, and that's what kind of drew us to him. Me being from Louisiana, I've been out of state. I've heard how people talk about us. They talk funny. They're stupid. They're this.
Ride the P-road to work.
Ride the P-road with the water boy. That's
right.
Reality. And here's Coach Ed Orgeron kind of taking all that stuff, working hard, and rising to the top of the mountain. So it was a remarkable story, and Derek Panamsky was a big part of that, big part of the Fiesta Bowl team the year before that finished number 6. And even in his first year, they go 9-3 in the regular season, and if they don't blow a coverage against Notre Dame, they're 10-3. So they didn't handle success well. And the hard thing for me, Jordy, to talk about is when people on the outside look at the record and whatnot, and they ask me why he's being fired. And people's personal stuff is their personal stuff, but I think what we can agree on is that after 2019, the edge and the focus was lost. Or did he change and then he went back to being who he was, or was he the same guy all along, or is it just a mixture of all of it? You know, what went wrong there at LSU? And some things out of his control, but COVID also, opting out became really in style, so to speak.
And compliance still haunts LSU.
Compliance still haunts LSU. We always hear Tyrann Mathieu would have never been thrown off the team at Alabama or other places, and I don't think guys should sit around and smoke weed until they're brain dead, but what is taking place at other schools, and has LSU kind of going out of their way to penalize themselves? That's always been a talk.
Absolutely. Well, your starting left tackle is, you know, playing for Kentucky and is looking at you on the sideline after every first down and making the gesture, and you know, I mean, it's that has to be a memory and a portrait that Scott Woodward has painted in his mind that he takes back to Baton Rouge and says, this can't happen anymore. You know, I mean, you can't go on the road and play an SEC team and have your players being dominant for the other squad over things that you control in-house. You know, I mean, you have a lot of say-so on those things happening, and I firmly believe and agree with you that you have to set boundaries that are for the best of the student athlete. You got to look out for their best interest. You know, you don't want to turn them into a bunch of potheads just because they can play football. But you also have to understand the culture, the locker room aspect, who you're bringing in, and how that world really functions before you start governing it with an iron fist, when really and truly you could probably do more help than you can do harm by recognizing, hey, let's adapt and find a new style, rather sticking to the style where, you know, I mean, you're still throwing guys off the team that, you know, make huge impacts on the win and loss column.
So after they win the national title, the hires, I don't have anything bad to say about, I'll never will really say anything bad about Steve Ensminger. I love Steve Ensminger.
Sure.
A true LSU Tiger. And after the national championship, people told me, he sincerely does not want any credit for what just happened. And I think we've heard from different sources that were on the headsets that he was the guy calling the plays in 2019. I'm not going to diminish anything Joe Brady did, but I sometimes feel like Joe Brady is a little romanticized in terms of what he contributed. He brought over the offense and all that stuff. But, you know, Steve Ensminger was kind of Coach O's security blanket. Every time he got in trouble, Steve, can you help me out?
Yeah.
And but it was kind of time for maybe Steve to bow out. But the other hires, the Bo Pellinis, the Scott Linehans, they didn't work out. And then this year, I think Jake Peets and Durante Jones are both bright young guys who are going to have a great career, but they maybe weren't ready for this stage.
It seems that way when you watch LSU just over the last 6 weeks. There's definitely been a feel of a learning on the job type sense that comes from watching them play. I will say that they looked very differently last Saturday versus Florida offensively, in which they looked organized, they looked tight, they looked like they had a plan, they looked like, I don't know if that was to say that somebody was meddling in the first 5 weeks or that somebody was given full control to call the game.
I did notice Orgeron, not to cut you off, but he was asked about that fourth down touchdown pass to Ray Jenkins, and he said something like,
I just let
Jake
I just told Jake to call it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I told Jake, this is yours, you call it. Like, and I thought in that same instance, like, well, that's kind of a clear indicator that somebody's been meddling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that somebody's been like, and I will say this, the first 5 games of the season, you would regularly see him with the microphone on his headset down and him kind of talking into the microphone while LSU had the ball, which I thought was very strange. Yeah. And on Saturday versus Florida, it was flipped up. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even in play. So I agree with you. I think both of them are very bright minds. I think that they knew when they got to them on the list that, they're going to make first-time play callers out of both of them at a college level. At an SEC school like LSU is a dangerous formula. And maybe you overprotect that. And maybe they were doing that early on to just make sure that they could, get in and be functional. But
and maybe some of your other big-name guys like Marcus Freeman, and they got word, hey, the head coach he's going to be in trouble.
Sure.
You don't want to take your family there.
Well, look at what Sean Payton did with Ryan Nielsen. I mean, how much does, we talked to Nick Underhill yesterday on our show from New Orleans.football, and he's got phenomenal relationships and resources inside the Saints, and he wondered out loud, how different would it be for Orgeron with Nielsen in, because he's so bright. He's such a good coach. I mean, just talking about the positives of the defensive line with the New Orleans Saints, how tight and organized and on time and on task they always are. But, Sean Payton saw something where he stepped in and he shut that thing down, and it was never really even discussed again. I mean, Nielsen and Orgeron, pretty close. Mm-hmm. Like real close.
Yeah.
And for that to be snipped like it was so suddenly and then never really discussed again, I think is kind of another.
What is understood doesn't need to be discussed.
Yeah, I kind of think there's another indicator there that, there's some rumblings underneath that people saw it.
Okay, I'm bouncing around here,
yeah.
The ADD. But, so the press conference the other night, you and I have been around watching LSU football for a while. Typically when a coach is fired, like Les Miles was fired 4 games into 2016, it's a written statement. Coach Miles puts out some statements. Love my time at LSU, love the 2007 national championship team and my family, blah, blah, blah. And then the AD puts out a statement. We appreciate Les's contributions to the program, blah, 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 but it's time to move in a different direction. Or an interim coach takes over with 1 game left. Or Curly Hallman, way back when, coaches the final 2 games of his career. So, to have a press conference with the AD and a coach who's getting fired with 5 games left is highly unusual, right? And then for them to not have an interim head coach, we've heard all along that a problem or a hang-up was they did not have someone to make the interim head coach. Right. I heard Steve Ensminger's name come up. Somebody close to Steve Ensminger told me not enough money in the world.
Right.
To do that.
Absolutely.
He didn't like doing interviews twice a year, much less 4 or 5 times a week, and stepping to the forefront of this.
Right.
So no. And then other guys, I think Corey Raymond just wants to coach. He's kind of shy. He doesn't want that. And just there was no guy to give it to. So Ed is the guy.
It is another example, and I think a highlighted failure of Ed Orgeron in his time at LSU. He said that was going to be his primary responsibility when he was hired as the head coach permanently, was that he understood his deficiencies, his setbacks, and that he was going to have to bring in the best personnel and the best coaching around him to make sure he could stay legitimate. And the fact that you can't find an interim on this staff is a great example of just how short he has fell at accomplishing the consistency of LSU. 2019 will always be magical. It'll always be a season that he will have credit for. It'll always be something that he is aligned to, and that may go down as the best football season ever in LSU football history. And as you can play this thing 150 more years, and it still would be like that. But the consistent clip that you needed to go at, it just was never accomplished, and it was because he couldn't bring in the personnel and the coaches to sustain it. Yeah. You know, and I think that is a great sign, because I agree with you on Insminger. I think that there was a little bit of, Insminger was kind of being talked about a couple of weeks back, and he was being brought back around, and I think behind closed doors they were saying, we might have to make a move in season. Will you take it? And he was kind of flirting with it. And the more he thought about it, he was like, you know what? I'm not doing this, man. I'm not. This isn't my deal. I was
thinking about, Jordy, what their pitch might be. Steve, this is your last labor of love to the school you love so much. Right. Take the ship. Just get us past Thanksgiving.
Just park this thing safely for us.
Nope.
Can't you see what a big dip in? You got a cup sitting at the table. I ain't doing it. I ain't doing that. Ain't enough money in the world for me to do that.
Steve, he sleeps on the couch at Football Ops, man. He loves LSU.
Right.
So I was just laughing at Steve Insminger and John Robinson. They sit next to each other during the games, just hanging out, telling stories about the 1979 LSU USC
right.
game that Insminger quarterbacked in, and John
Marcus
Robinson
Allen
coached
for
the USC. And look, the press conference, just my thoughts. These are my thoughts. I don't want to come across as snarky, judgmental media guy, but I thought money was mentioned too much on Orgeron's part. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear that you're going to miss this place. They want to hear a sentimental story about Joe Burrow. They want to hear about how much you love the school. And honestly, if you do love the school and somebody asks you, what's your advice to the next head coach, you don't say, not my job to do that. Very take my ball and go home type response. Paul Maneri would not say something like that. Those are my thoughts on the press conference. I don't think Scott Woodward and Ed Orgeron are going fishing.
No.
Or going to a camp.
I thought Woodward set himself up for a fishing hole joke right there, really. I mean.
The fishing hole story. Some guy at the gym the other day, he's down from around that area. He's like, those stories are real. They say, whatever happened to Todd? What was in that levee over there?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I don't think it was going to get killed. But just your thoughts on the press conference.
Awkward. Weird. Unprecedented. There was nothing like that to compare it to. I mean, you've never seen two people of power in that position ending a relationship with more time left on the books to live together. You know what I mean? Like, this, to me, has got to be one of the most awkward, weird, confusing time. Even if you can play and keep face on it, it's still people behind like, what are we gonna?
John Brady showed up with Skip Bertman and cried.
Yeah.
But he did not coach the rest of the year. Butch Pierre coached.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen turnovers within the middle of the season that end unceremoniously, even respectively, like the one that you just painted. But you've never seen anything like this, and you've never seen the way that it ended like it did on Sunday. That was a very strange environment. It was a very weird atmosphere. I agree with you. You could tell. I mean, I thought the sense of relief that you could feel on Orgeron coming through the television, coming through the Zoom, was palpable. I mean, he was sitting more straight up. He was smiling. He was making a couple of jokes. I agree with you that the money thing was, distasteful, but it kind of shows you that he's like, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? Give me my check, get me on the road, let me go. Mm-hmm. And it was.
And no dirty laundry, perhaps, will be aired.
Well, I think that's got to be the agreement. You know what I mean? I think behind closed doors. Because to me, if you were watching on Saturday the Florida game, it was evident that something was different. You know what I mean? I think that the reports in the news have come out that this deal was agreed upon on Thursday night, almost a week ago today. Mm-hmm. We shoot this on Thursday.
Darren DeQuando got a shot of him after the game where they line up. They still don't sing the alma mater, but they put their arms around one another, and his head kind of dropped like that. And in that moment, that's all. That is exactly what you're talking about.
CBS cameras picked up, or the post-game press conference picked up. CBS this weekend with Ole Miss, but last weekend the sideline reporter picked up when she went directly to him for immediate reaction after the game. In that moment, you would think a coach on the hot seat, feeling the heat, is celebrating that win. That's a big win, man. You know what I mean? Like that could change your momentum.
Out of nowhere, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what last week was like for him. Right. You know, to get that win, losing all those players, showing up on Saturday, running the football for like they did, and controlling that game, and he just was very kind of like gutted. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it was just.
I think you said toast or
cooked.
Cooked. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he looked he on the sidelines. He looked cooked. I mean, even the headset and the microphone up all game. You know what I mean? It's like, what else do I mean, there's nothing else for me to really do here.
And at his press conference, too, he wasn't emotional.
Yeah.
Like when he got the job, he talked about his late father and he cried and everything. And that wasn't a setting to talk about his late father or anything, but there was none of the, this was my dream job.
Right.
And I lost it. I feel
I'm gonna kick myself for this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There was none of that. And maybe whenever he steps to the podium, whether that's at a bowl game or Texas A&M for the last time, maybe some of that will come out. The disappointing thing for me, Jordy, is that after he won the national title, just the way I'm built, I would have been petrified to fall off the cliff.
No doubt about it.
Petrified
100%.
that I'd be viewed a different way, and I would be just maybe so high-strung, and we are not going back to whatever. And if I was talking to Scott Woodward and when we'd be struggling, I'd be like, look, man, I feel terrible about this. We're going to get out of this. We're going to fight through this. We're going to, I would emotionally make it clear that I'm not
struggling
about this. Yeah. And I just don't know what the conversations were. But Scott Woodward obviously looked at the situation and said, I'm going to get this boxer out of the ring before Ivan Drago knocks out Apollo Creed here to his death. And we're going to get ahead of this. We're not going to let this erode any further.
Yes, and I think that was, when Woodward was looking at this scenario going into the season, this obviously is the worst case scenario for him. To have him make a move in the season, you don't have anybody on the staff that you trust. There's nobody that you can hand it over to. And I still think that in the back of his mind, there's still a little bit of trepidation on, we still got to get to the finish line. Yeah. You still got to get to the finish line without anything truly catastrophic happening, and not just talking about the on-the-field play, which is why I think in that termination agreement, I think that there is a gag order to the highest degree of we're not mentioning anything about what's going on. And it's the same reason why I think he got his full buyout.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you look at what's happening over at Tennessee with Jeremy Pruitt, where he's fighting over $12 million, and now you're going to have to sit down under oath, be deposed, and talk about all the skeletons that are in the closet of Tennessee's football program. Scott Woodward, Stephanie Remph, Board of Supervisors, Virgil, they're all saying behind closed doors, that ain't happening to us.
And that's the difference between them and Joe Oliva,
right?
Who ran LSU.
Yeah, with John Chavis, he fought for $400,000.
Right.
I mean, you cut that. You cut that. I mean, you make $400K before lunch in LSU sports. You know what I mean? Like, cut the check, shut up, and move on. Don't pick this fight. And which is why I have so much confidence in Woodward to make this move, because Jacques, just like I do. From Baton Rouge, went to Catholic High, graduated from LSU, worked at LSU in 2000 through 2005 as government relations personnel, saw up close what it meant to have the right guy in place as the LSU football coach, what it could mean for not only the football and athletic program, for the institution and the state. He left Baton Rouge with the aspiration of always coming back to LSU as an administrator. He knew it when he left to go to Washington. He was coming back to LSU. In the back of his mind, he had to be thinking through that 15, 20 years away, at some point I'm going to have to hire an LSU football coach. I'm going to have to do that. And he's made hires along the way to prove to you the type of guy and the type of negotiator and the type of relationships he's had. So that is why in this instance right now, I think that this is the culmination of almost his professional life, kind of looking at him over the next couple of months. And while people are saying, how much influence will the Board of Supervisors have? How much influence will the president have? I got on great information and from a solid source on Tuesday of this week that this is Scott Woodward's hire. He will hear voices. He's obviously going to consult. He's going to talk to people and let people in, but it's ultimately his hire. and it's going to be his choice. And I don't think it should be any other way. And it doesn't matter if it's black, white, wherever it comes from, he's going to get the best qualified guy. Jay Johnson, Kim Mulkey, Chris Peterson, Buzz Williams. But you can talk about Buzz Williams all you want. The time he got him at Texas A&M for that basketball hire, he was one of the hottest names in the country. So,
yeah, the landscape at LSU has changed a lot since Scott Woodward got here. Dee Bro retired, which I don't think has anything to do with Scott Woodward, but you had a women's basketball coach that people have been grumbling about for a long time. She kind of leaves on her own, but probably knew it was time to go. He's replaced by Kim Mulkey. Are you kidding? You know, I mean,
a Hall of Famer, bro.
Yeah, I mean, you could not have dreamed up a better scenario than that one. Somebody I know texted me, there's a 0.005 chance she's coming here. Don't get excited. It's not happening. Here she is.
Told you so, Hannah Griff.
It wasn't Hannah, but yeah. And then Paul Maneri, a Hall of Fame coach, who's on the backside of his career, replaced by Jay Johnson, who hadn't coached a game, but everything I hear is
just. I mean, Matuk has become a co-host on the show, and he went and met with him for the first time last week, and he cannot stop gloating about this guy. I mean, like, just loves him, loves the style, just really, and the people you talk to, you got that Saban quality to him where it's just all about baseball, 24 hours a day, recruiting, development, players, program, all that stuff, he's consumed by it.
I saw Chris Reed the other day, told me the same thing at a baseball game. He goes, man, he said, used to be it might rain outside and they'd go inside. Nope, they're out there.
Yeah.
They're showing up early on Saturday morning and working hard. And so now the football coach dictates everything. And so just, I guess, some thoughts on who it might be. Let's start with Mel Tucker, because we do know we have an African-American president at LSU for the first time ever. I think he's the first in the history of the SEC, if I'm not mistaken. So I think we mentioned Charles Hannah. I think he put it very well. It would be an insult to Mel Tucker, to James Franklin, to anybody of color to say we're hiring you because you're black. Absolutely. And it would be an insult to them to tell them we're not hiring you because you're black. Hire the best guy, and if that connects with a fan base as a historic hire, I think that's a great thing as well. But Mel Tucker, I'm just wondering if it's real or if it's, let's just throw this out there to eat up a few weeks.
Mel Tucker to me is real, and I think what you're going to figure out over Mel Tucker over the next couple of weeks is how viable of how viable he is ready for this opportunity at LSU. Michigan State's about to go through the bulk and the gauntlet of their schedule. And if you're watching and seeing how they perform to see how a leader or a coach directs his team, you'll get a clear sign of that over the next couple of weeks on Mel Tucker. I think that Mel Tucker checks a lot of boxes for LSU. He's a really good football coach, comes with a really strong resume, and has done and accomplished a lot of successful things in the sport. So you'll see. I think that, I don't think a decision has been made. I think his name's in the mix. I think they're watching and obviously going to interview him. But the next month of Mel Tucker's football life is going to tell. He's either going to coach himself into this job or he's going to coach himself out of the job.
And he doesn't necessarily need to win those games,
right?
But he doesn't need
perform.
To lose 49-6.
How do you look? What's the optics? What's your preparation? How disciplined is your team? What's your sideline emotion like? What's everything? I can't imagine how deep and analytical you get on something like this when you really are looking at who the right person can be. I think Mel Tucker is in that Tier 1 prospect list.
I can totally see Scott Woodward stepping to the podium, right? 21 years ago, we hired a coach from Michigan State, and today we're doing it again.
Right.
So we'll see about that. James Franklin, a lot of people will say, well, why would he leave Penn State? Penn State's a great job to go to USC or LSU, but we'll see about that. You've interviewed Billy Napier, who I had a conversation with Matt Malk yesterday, who said, look, I've spent a lot of time around Nick Saban. Billy Napier would be a perfect fit, was what Matt Malk told me. There is the whole, we don't hire the coach from the Raging Cajuns.
Get out of here.
But he's going to be a star somewhere at a big school one day.
Jacques, it takes some. You better have some confidence if you're going to turn down an SEC job 3 times. And he's done that. He told South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Auburn no. And there's only 14 of those things in the world. And if you're a college football coach, that's the tip top of the mountain to be in the SEC. He's waiting on something. He's confident and bidding on himself, which I like. We had him on this morning. You and I are speaking on this Thursday. We had him on Thursday morning of the Jordy Culotta show. We went through some phone difficulties, but we got a lot of information from him, including asking him about the LSU job. Obviously, went straight to coach speak, but you can still tell in that tone and in his answer how big this job is for guys that are still trying to climb the ladder. You know what I mean? Like, it's a scary proposition to a lot of people to be the LSU head football coach,
yeah.
But there's a section of people that are frothing at the mouth for the opportunity to get this job, and I think Billy Napier is probably right there at the top of the list. And again, to me, Jacques, to tell teams no over the last 3 years,
right.
I'm not saying that somebody was in his ear directly from Baton Rouge, but I'm saying that he knows something. You know what I mean? Like, he knew something, that just the energy it takes to tell athletic directors, no, I appreciate it, but I'm going to walk. I'm going to go back to Lafayette and stay with the Cajun program. Yeah. What do you mean? You're not coming to...
Oh, look, growing up, like you said, to think that the Raging Cajun head coach would turn down Auburn, no way.
Right. Even if they
planet?
did tell him who to hire. You know, I mean, that was kind of he would have taken the Auburn job. I mean, like, truth be told, he would have taken the Auburn job. He was offered it, but offered it on the details that he kept coaches in place, or that he hired certain coaches. And he said, look, man, I've been waiting this opportunity my whole life. I'm either going to succeed or fail with my people, which I can respect. Now, at Mississippi State and South Carolina, it would have been his gig. He told him no. And, you know, we had him on this morning. We've talked to him before. And his program is as impressive of a program that you will find in college football. If you're talking about consistency and winning, development of players. He's putting guys into the NFL. Elijah Mitchell's the starting running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Coaches are developing. Rob Sale was his offensive coordinator. He's now the offensive line coach for the New York Giants. There are people that are coming out of that program and climbing the ladder, succeeding, developing. He is, if you missed it, go back and listen to it. It's a 365-day deal for him. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And every single day is calculated, scheduled. There's 6 phases of recruiting he talks about in the conversation from this morning. I mean, he is very granular in the way that he thinks and controls and you know, looks over a program.
Yeah.
And to me, he's got to be at the top of the list. I think that he's got to be 1, 2, 3 on the list, just because I know that Saban is being consulted here. We know about Woodward's and Saban's relationship. Let's look, Saban and Woodward, they're not business. Right. They're friends. Like, they vacation together. They go hang out together, and it would be almost insubordinate if Scott Woodward, after all these guys, I mean, Mel Tucker we've talked about, Lane Kiffin's name I'm sure will come up, Jimbo Fisher's name seems to be in the mix, and Billy, all these guys have worked for Saban. Woodward's talking to him in some capacity of, who do you like out of the mix? And from what we've always been told, Napier has always kind of been Saban's teacher's pet, just kind of like, this is the one that really gets the whole thing. You know, the recruiting aspect, the building and developing of the people, not the players.
Right.
Bringing in the right personnel from an academic standpoint, to the weight room, to the nutritionist, to everything that goes in to overseeing the program. Napier has a full understanding and respect of how to do it. And if you're looking at, you know, I mean, if you're looking at Louisiana's program, the fact that they're 5-1 right now, after the personnel that they lost last year, shows you that they're a program. They don't rebuild, they reload.
Yeah. And I went to school there. I grew up on Brian Mitchell. I was in school when Brandon Stokely and Jake Delhomme were there, and the finest hour.
The glory days.
Yeah, 25 years ago is when they beat Texas A&M. I was there that night. They tore down the goalpost and brought them to the keg on
Johnson Street. On the strip. Yeah.
The next week,
penny pitchers.
The next week, yeah, exactly. The next week they went to Southern Miss and got destroyed. But anyway, you know, Nelson Stokely did a pretty good job. But to think that the Raging Cajuns would be ranked in the top 25
consistently,
like, get out of here, no way. They beat Iowa State last year. Matt Campbell's a name that's coming up, you know, maybe under the radar, but they shocked Iowa State. And so, yeah, the job he's done with the resources they've had. Lafayette's a great city, and the next coach should win there too. But if he's doing what he's doing at UL Lafayette, Louisiana, whatever you call them, what would he do here?
It is scary to think about. It really, I mean, I think that it feels like the time is right. It feels like in his professional football life that now is the time to make that jump, that he's ready for it. I think there's other people in the mix, but I think that Billy Napier's name has to be on the first page.
And this is a long-term decision, obviously. But in the short term, no offense, no, it's not an insult. The Cajuns aren't going to a playoff or
Right.
anything like that. He could step in right away. And in terms of protecting this recruiting class, that apparently this is like not once in a lifetime talent, but maybe 2 or 3 times in a lifetime talent. That the 22 recruits that are committed to LSU, he knows the area. He could lock those guys down, I would think.
I think that's one of his biggest selling points, is that his relationship with the high school coaches and with the players in the state right now. I think that has got to be one of the prerequisites, not only because of the class of 22, but just the long-term building of the program. And 5 years on the job. I mean, he's as well connected in this state. I mean, him and Orgeron's life has kind of been right side by side, at Lafayette and LSU. He's always, the LSU program has always had nothing but respect for Napier and what's going on down in Lafayette, and it feels like he could be the next guy.
And he's a friendly guy. He's a nice guy, but coming off of Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, he's not a loose cannon.
Yeah.
He's not going to have a press conference where he says something you're like, "Whoa, what did he just say?"
Right,
or off
right.
the field stuff, or. I think he would just be solid. As somebody told me, look, I don't care about sound bites anymore. Just give me a guy that's going to win and don't do anything silly.
From LSU standpoint, you got to be thinking, I don't want a character anymore.
Right.
I don't want to be a meme. You know what I mean? If your guy can just go out there, answer questions, analyze the play, talk about what's coming up, and do it in a professional manner, that's going to be, that's going to remedy a lot of LSU's problems. I mean, it really will. I mean, a lot of the issues that they've dealt with has been because of the public relations, just mismanagement.
Yeah, yeah, and there was more than one media outlet that shot the interaction with the UCLA fan. Our video went viral.
Yes, it did.
Very quickly.
Shock. Out of everybody, the bank of cameras, the Fox Sports has got a camera rolling right there, and they go with the local AFB. They go local.
Somebody told me, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but somebody told me that the Fox camera, the Nat sound was down on it. So, I don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
I'm just hearing whatever. I did see the other local stations run it and whatnot,
Yeah.
but I think it was a case where, like you said, every time somebody kind of poked him, he responded to it. And I like Coach Orgeron. I enjoyed covering him. I got along with him better than any of the 3 coaches I've covered here at LSU, and certainly he was Louisiana and is Louisiana through and through and whatnot.
Yeah, no, and I actually heard through some back channels of our media friends that he felt he was pretty, turned off by himself by the way that he handled your question at a press conference a couple of weeks back. I caught through a couple of people at LSU that, he came back to the office and was like, I didn't handle that right. Jacques always been good to me. He was not looking for a soundbite. He was not trying to set me up. You weren't trying. You really weren't. I thought that it was almost like it was an educated follow-up.
Yeah, I'll take a little ownership in that. I did not plan on asking him about his job status. He kind of talked about it already. I'd asked him about the transfer portal and people trying to poach your roster and something. And at the end of it, he said, "Well, sometimes I'm the last one to know." And at that moment, I kind of felt bad for him.
Me too.
And so I said, "Well, Coach, how are you doing?
Right.
Talk about your job status." I was almost like talking to him.
Yeah, you were almost being kind of like endearing, you were empathetic to it. Kind of like.
That's what
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
I wasn't trying to.
And I think when he stepped away from it, he realized that.
Well, and I didn't tweet about it. I didn't put it on the news. I didn't want to draw any attention to it because I thought it got a lot more attention than it deserved. It was not. Look, I've covered Sean Payton and Nick Saban, and those people have chewed me up and spit me out. That it didn't.
Took Saban's parking spot.
I did. We'll just tow it next time. If we coach the way you guys park, we're not going to win a game this year.
All right.
We walked in, I'm like, please don't talk about this. Please don't talk about this. First thing.
Looking at you the whole time.
This silver Mercedes-Benz parked on the curb, slams the door shut, and Bonnet's like shaking his head. I'm like,
shock.
And I hear him from a distance. Well, if I get a ticket, and I'm thinking, who's going to give Nick Saban a ticket? Really?
If I get a ticket.
Sometimes I tell that story, and it's like, aren't people tired of hearing this story? No,
never.
It's like it's one of those greatest hits. You just keep breaking it
out.
Right. But I will say that he called me immediately.
Really?
After, and he apologized.
Oh wow, that's good.
He called me immediately after and said, "Look, hey, I'm sorry about that." I said, "Coach, I'm not out to get you, man." So
well, you see, like those are some of the stories that we don't, I mean, all this,
yeah.
all the
I
stuff.
debated, should I share that?
All the stuff that's coming out now, and you can tell. I mean, there's some type of PR campaign going on to make sure that LSU wins out, right? But I mean, those are some of the stories that even during this time period, you may get overlooked, or you may not hear, and that's that's solid. I mean, that's.
And you can debate what they've done, Jordy, but it does kind of take I would hate to say that any LSU fan would be rooting against their team, but it takes that element out of
absolutely.
If he rallies and goes 8-4 and earns another year, are we still heading in a bad direction?
And I think that was what that press conference was for last week, because they beat Florida and they were probably behind closed doors saying, hold up, you know what I mean? Like if he starts doing this, we've got to make sure and let people know that he can't save his job. You know what I mean? Like, it's too far gone, and no matter what happens here, I was told on Friday before that Florida game that he could beat Florida, Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, and he's not coming back. And that made me think, like, oh, they're probably going to have this press conference, because I was under the assumption they were going to get beat. Like I was thinking that they may even do it like following the game, like, or at leleast Sunday morning. But I think that's why they had to get out in front of it, just to kill that momentum of if so. And it also, to me, it now re-energizes, reinvigorates the crowd behind him, where if he gets out and gets going, you can rebuild some of the good feels around him, right? Like, it doesn't have to go out as some martyr, you know what I mean? You don't have to go out as some bad guy.
When he goes down the hill for the Texas A&M game, the Tiger Walk, Coach O, that regular season finale, like Les Miles did, people were telling him goodbye.
Right.
They were not saying,
right, F you.
Come back next year.
Right,
they were
right,
giving him the love, And I think somebody told me when Les Miles came out of the tunnel that day, and the student section went ballistic and was cheering, the LSU administrators were shocked. Like, they could not believe, oh my goodness.
They really like him?
They like him?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I think everyone was putting their arms around Les that night. Hey, we love you. Thanks for what you did, but it's time for a change.
Yeah.
And then after the game, when Joe Oliva,
Well, Shaq, they did the Shaq sideline interview, is what I heard, like, swung the whole thing. Like, Shaq on ESPN cameras is like, you can't get rid of Les Miles. Like, you got to at least tell that man something. And they were all like up in the box, like, oh God, like, we might have to pull the plug on this. I mean, this guy gives $10 million a year.
But a good AD, Jordy, right, has to
absolutely,
stick to his
and say,
principles.
you know what, well, I'm looking out for the betterment of the program.
Yeah. Just because we beat A&M tonight doesn't mean we're in a better spot than before. Well, look, we've chatted for a while. We could talk for a lot longer, but keep up the great work. I know everyone appreciates your work there. You're hustling. You're doing great stuff. Your team's doing great stuff. And I guess a quick plug for your show and where people can find you.
I appreciate that, JD. We're on digital platforms. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and the easiest place to find us is JordyCulottaShow.com, JordyCulottaShow.com. You can get archive shows and get quick links to YouTube and Facebook. But we're there every morning, 7 to 9 a.m.
All right, my friend.
Thank you, JD.
Great seeing you.
You too, buddy.